There is a number inside every major supermarket's financial filing that most shoppers have never thought to look for. It is not the revenue from the groceries on the shelves. It is not the profit from the bakery or the deli counter or the prepared foods section. It is the money the supermarket collected before a single customer walked through the door, before one item was scanned, before one trolley was pushed, before one loaf of bread was sold. Major supermarket chains collect hundreds of millions of dollars every year from food companies who simply want the right to exist on the shelf. That money has a name. It is called a slotting fee, and once you understand what it is and how it works, the entire supermarket rearranges itself, because a supermarket is not a shop that buys food and sells it at a markup. It is a landlord that charges brands for floor space, a data company that sells what you buy to people who want to sell you more things, and a financial institution that holds supplier money for months before it pays. The food is almost incidental. Before we get into the structure of it, one thing from you. Think about the last time you walked into a supermarket for 3 things and came out with 11. Put the number in the comments, the things you went in for and the things you came out with. Because somebody reading this went in for milk, bread, and eggs, and came out with a rotisserie chicken, 2 bottles of wine, a scented candle, and a magazine they will never finish. The store did not trick you exactly. It was designed for that to happen. And by the end of this, you will see exactly how. Put it below. And if you are already down there, the like and subscribe button would mean a great deal. Start with the fundamental economics of selling food, because they are worse than almost any other retail category you can name. A supermarket buys a tin of soup from a manufacturer. It sells that tin of soup to a customer. The difference between what it paid and what it charged is the gross margin. In food retail, that gross margin runs at somewhere between 20 and 30% on average across the store. That sounds workable until you understand what has to come out of it. Staff wages across a store that is open 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Refrigeration running continuously across an enormous floor space. The cost of the building itself, either rent or the debt on the purchase. Spoilage, which in fresh food is not a risk, it is a certainty. Waste disposal, utilities. The logistics of getting the food from the supplier to the shelf in a condition the customer will accept. By the time all of that has been paid, the net profit margin on a supermarket's food operation runs at somewhere between 1 and 3%. 1 to 3 cents on every dollar that passes through the till. Walmart's grocery operation, the largest food retail operation on earth, runs at a net margin that in most years sits below 3%. Kroger, the largest traditional supermarket chain in the United States, runs at margins in the same territory. Tesco in the United Kingdom, one of the most sophisticated food retailers in the world, operates at net margins that rarely exceed 4% even in strong years. 1 to 3% is not a business. It is a rounding error. It is the margin of a business that is perpetually one bad quarter away from a problem. And it explains why supermarkets have spent the last 40 years building revenue streams that have nothing to do with the price of a tin of soup. The food margin is the foundation, but the foundation is not where the money is. The money is in everything built on top of it, and the first thing built on top of it is something most shoppers have never heard of. Walk into any major supermarket and look at the shelves. Not at the products, at the shelves themselves. The position of every single item in that store is not accidental. It is not determined by what sells best or what is most useful to the customer or what makes the most logical sense in terms of how people cook. It is determined, at least in significant part, by who paid for it. Slotting fees are payments made by food manufacturers to supermarkets for the right to place their products on the shelf. To get a new product into a major chain, a manufacturer typically pays an upfront slotting fee that can run from a few $1,000s for a small regional chain to hundreds of thousands of dollars per product per store for a major national retailer. Frito-Lay wants to put a new flavor of crisps into Walmart. They pay for the slot. Coca-Cola wants eye-level placement in the drinks aisle. They pay for the position. A new salsa brand wants to be stocked in 500 stores across 3 states. They pay per store, per product, upfront, with no guarantee of what will happen next. The estimates on the total scale of slotting fees across the American grocery industry run from $9 billion to over $25 billion annually. The range is wide because the payments are almost entirely opaque. There is no public filing requirement. There is no disclosure obligation. The fees are negotiated privately between manufacturers and buyers, and they appear in neither party's public accounts in a way that makes them easy to total up. What is not in dispute is the direction. The fees exist, they are large, and they are paid by manufacturers who have no alternative if they want to reach customers through the dominant retail channel. Now understand what this does to the shelf. The products at eye level, the products at the end of the aisle, the products in the promotional display at the entrance, those positions were purchased. Not earned by quality or customer demand, purchased. The brand you reach for automatically because it has always been at eye level in every supermarket you have ever been in has been at eye level in every supermarket you have ever been in, partly because the company behind it paid for that position for decades. The small brand that makes a better product but cannot afford the slotting fee is on the bottom shelf. Or it is not on the shelf at all, and the fee is only the beginning. Once a manufacturer is on the shelf, the supermarket can charge them for promotional placement, for being featured in the weekly circular, for being included in the end-of-aisle display, for being part of the buy one, get one promotion that the customer thinks the supermarket is running as a service and that the manufacturer is actually funding entirely. Every promotional activity that looks like the supermarket doing something for the customer is, in most cases, the manufacturer paying the supermarket to do something for the manufacturer. The industry has a name for all of this revenue that flows from manufacturers to retailers. It is called trade spend. And the estimates on total trade spend in the American grocery industry, which includes slotting fees, promotional payments, advertising co-ops, and volume rebates, run to over $100 billion a year. $100 billion flowing from the companies that make the food to the companies that sell it, before a single customer makes a single decision. There is a third business running inside every major supermarket, and it is one that most customers actively participate in and actively fund without realizing what they are funding. The loyalty card. You hand it over at the till, you collect points, you get a small discount on certain items, you feel like you are getting something for free. You are not getting something for free. You are getting a small discount in exchange for something worth considerably more than the discount. You are getting a few pence off a box of cereal in exchange for a detailed, continuous, time-stamped record of every single thing you have ever bought in that store. Your loyalty card data tells the supermarket when you shop, how often you shop, how much you spend per visit, which categories you buy across, which brands you are loyal to, and which you switch between on price, whether you have children based on the nappies and the school lunch items and the breakfast cereals, whether you are health conscious based on the organic and the low calorie and the supplement purchases, roughly what your income level is based on the balance of premium and value products in your basket. It knows whether you are cooking from scratch or buying prepared meals. It knows when you run out of things. It knows your routines better than most of your friends do. And it sells that knowledge, not in a way that hands your name and address to a stranger, in a way that allows food manufacturers, consumer goods companies, and increasingly financial services and insurance companies to target promotions and advertising at segments of shoppers who match a specific purchasing profile. Kroger's data and analytics division, called 84.51 Degrees, generated over $1 billion in revenue in a recent year, selling insights derived from loyalty card data to manufacturers who want to understand and influence purchasing behavior. $1 billion from data, from a supermarket, from the card you signed up for to save 40 cents on a ready meal. Tesco in the United Kingdom built dunnhumby, the analytics company that pioneered this model in the 1990s and eventually became so valuable that Tesco sold it for a figure that at the time was reported as close to $2 billion. The insight that drove it was simple and profound. Tesco understood its customers better than its customers understood themselves, and that understanding was a commercial asset that manufacturers would pay very large sums to access. The loyalty card reframed the entire customer relationship. The customer thinks they are being rewarded for loyalty. The supermarket knows it is purchasing data. The points are not a gift. They are the price the supermarket pays for the most valuable thing the customer has, which is not their money. It is their behavior. There is a fourth mechanism that almost nobody outside the food industry ever discusses, and it is the one that turns a 1 to 3% food margin into something a business can actually be built on. When a supermarket buys stock from a supplier, it does not pay immediately. Payment terms in the grocery industry run at 30, 60, sometimes 90 days after delivery. The supermarket receives the goods, puts them on the shelf, sells them to customers, collects the cash, and then weeks or months later pays the supplier. In the intervening period, the supermarket is holding money that belongs to the supplier. At scale, across hundreds of thousands of product lines and thousands of suppliers, that float is enormous. Walmart at any given moment holds somewhere between $40 and $50 billion of inventory that it has not yet paid for. The suppliers who made that inventory are effectively lending Walmart their working capital for free. The cash those goods generate when sold sits with Walmart until the payment term expires. And that cash, in the meantime, is not sitting idle. It is being invested in short-term financial instruments used to fund capital expenditure or simply reducing the amount Walmart needs to borrow, which reduces its interest costs. The payment float is a source of free financing that is structural, permanent, and invisible to the customer. The own brand product is the other lever. Every major supermarket chain now has an extensive range of products sold under its own label. No-name brands, store brands, value ranges, premium own label. These products are manufactured by third parties, often the same manufacturers who make the branded version sitting next to them on the shelf, but sold without the marketing cost, the slotting negotiation, the brand premium. The margin on own brand products runs significantly higher than on branded equivalents, somewhere between 40 and 60% gross margin compared to the 20 to 30% on branded goods. A supermarket that shifts 10% of its sales from branded to own brand improves its overall margin materially without changing a single price on the shelf. And the own brand creates a different kind of power over suppliers. Because now, the supermarket is not just a customer of the manufacturer. It is a competitor. It is selling a product directly alongside the manufacturer's product at a lower price with a higher margin in a position on the shelf that it controls entirely. The manufacturer who wants to stay on that shelf has to price competitively against a product whose economics it has no visibility into. That asymmetry of information is worth more than any individual slotting fee negotiation. Here is the case for the other side. Because it is not weak, the slotting fee system, for all its opacity, does something real. It allocates scarce shelf space. A supermarket has a fixed amount of physical space and tens of thousands of products competing for it. Some mechanism has to decide what goes on the shelf and what does not. Slotting fees create a financial signal. Manufacturers who are confident in their product will pay to get it in front of customers. Those who are not confident will not. It is a crude filter, but it is a filter. The alternative, allocating shelf space purely on predicted sales, requires the supermarket to make judgments about products it has never stocked, which is its own kind of guesswork. The loyalty card data argument has a similar defense. The data is used to give customers promotions and discounts on things they actually buy. The Kroger app sends you a voucher for the specific coffee brand in your basket, not a random product you have never purchased. The relevance of the targeting is genuinely better than untargeted advertising, which means the manufacturer spends less to reach more interested customers, which in theory reduces the cost of goods over time. The data transaction is not purely extractive. There is a return to the customer, even if the return is smaller than the value surrendered. The supplier payment terms are the hardest to defend cleanly. 90-day payment terms imposed by a retailer with dominant market power on a small food manufacturer with thin margins are not a negotiation between equals. They are a structural transfer of working capital from the party that can least afford it to the party that least needs it. Several countries have introduced legislation to cap payment terms in the grocery sector, specifically because the power imbalance was producing outcomes that were damaging small suppliers. The United Kingdom introduced the Grocery Supply Code of Practice for exactly this reason. The legislation exists because the market was not self-correcting. The honest version is not that supermarkets are extracting from customers. It is that the business of selling food at a margin thin enough to be competitive requires finding revenue everywhere else. And everywhere else turned out to be the manufacturer, the supplier, and the customer's data. The food on the shelf is the reason you walk in. Everything surrounding it is the reason the business works. So where actually is the money? Not in the food. The food margin barely covers the lights. The money is in the floor space, which manufacturers pay for before the customer arrives. It is in the data, which the loyalty card extracts from every visit and sells to the people who made the food in the first place. It is in the payment terms, which turn supplier invoices into months of free working capital at a scale that funds the entire operation. And it is in the own brand product, which sits next to the branded version on a shelf the supermarket controls, at a margin the manufacturer cannot match and cannot see. The trolley you push around that store is not shopping. It is a data collection instrument attached to a rental property where the tenants paid to be there before you arrived. Next time you hand over your loyalty card, you now know exactly what you are handing over. And it is not the card. If this one changed how you see those aisles, hit like and subscribe. The Full Money and Business playlist is on the channel. The Amazon video sits right next to this one. The same architecture, an entirely different industry, the same conclusion. The thing you thought was being sold to you and the thing actually being sold were never the same thing. See you in the next one.